शिरोदिनि वासिनि विष्णुविलासिनि जिष्णुनुते भगवति हेशिति कण्ठकुटुम्बिनि भूरि कुटुम्बिनि भूरि कृते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते सुरवरवर्षिणि दुर्धरदर्शिनि दुर्मुखमर्षिणि हर्षरते त्रिभुवनपोषिणि शङ्करतोषिणि किल्बिषमोषिनि घोषरते धनुजनिरोषिणि दिथिशुकरोषिनि दुर्मथतोषिनि सिन्धुसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते
Hi guys, thank you for joining the live stream. Today we have back with us Sreejit Datta, and today we are going to discuss another staunch nationalist who apparently was born in a Hindu Kulin Brahmin family, went on to become a Catholic, then again became a Hindu right before his death. So sir, what is this weird insane story with Mr. Brahmabandhav Upadhyay?
Hi, good to be back here. And yes, you are correct. This is this biography of Brahmabandhav Upadhyay, whose real name was Bhavan Charan Bandyopadhyay, does feel like a roller coaster ride when you peruse it, when you read it. Today, I'm going to mainly draw from works by two biographers, actually three.
Okay.
One is a disciple of Brahmabandhav, a Catholic disciple by the name of Brahmachari Animanand, who was from Sindh. And the other two, the first one of these two other biographies are by Professors Haridas and Uma Mukhopadhyay. It's a Bengali book called Brahmabandhav Upadhyay ও ভারতের জাতীয় আন্দোলন. And the third one is a biography by a colleague of Brahmabandhav named Prabodh Chandra Singh.
Okay.
So I would like to start by throwing a question at you. Okay, the answer won't be difficult to guess or to give. So I'm going to give a quote and ask you who is the originator of this quote, who had uttered these words. First, I'll say it in Bangla, in the original, then I'll translate it. Quote, Jaha shuno, jaha shikho, jaha koro, Hindu thakio, Bagali thakio. Which means no matter what you do, what you learn, no matter what you hear, remain a Hindu, remain a Bengali. So, who had uttered these words?
Swami
Easy to
Vivekananda, I
guess.
think.
No, it was Brahmabandhav Upadhyay himself. So this is something that he had written in the very first volume and number of the journal, or rather the weekly magazine that he used to edit, called Sandhya. And Sandhya can be described as the very first extremist magazine or publication that started being published from Bengal.
I see.
What you see here in this particular quote is an exhortation by Brahmabandhav to the population of Bengal, to the people of Bengal, and he wants them to remain a Hindu and a Bengali, no matter what they learn, hear, or do. So this basically points towards the final problem with which Brahmabandhav had become occupied. He was basically occupied with a number of intellectual, moral, and social issues, which we will briefly discuss today. But I'll begin with this final one, and maybe then go back to how he began his life, how he began this adventure of his life. So this final problem was to basically awaken his sleeping countrymen, the Bengalis, so that they can, first of all, become aware of the danger that faces them in the form of British colonialism. And secondly, he wanted them to have a great sense of pride in themselves, in what it means to be a Bengali, what it means to be a Hindu. You can see that he emphasizes on being both or remaining both Hindu as well as Bengali, no matter what they do here or learn, which actually tells us that in his time, it was very natural for nationalist thinkers and nationalist leaders, especially the radical ones, the revolutionary nationalist leaders, to use the province, the local, such as Bengal or Maharashtra or Punjab, as the launch pad to gaining a nationalist feeling. This is something very important. And often people, while reading these early nationalist thinkers and many revolutionary nationalist leaders, confuse them as or wrongly evaluate them, wrongly understand them as regionalists. So this is something that has to be kept in mind at the very beginning, that when people like Brahmabandhav or Rabindranath or even Bipin Chandra, and also interestingly in Sri Aurobindo, we see an emphasis on regaining one's Bengali Hindu identity. Okay. In fact, I'm not saying Bengali Hindu as a sort of a phrase. I'm saying it as Bengali slash Hindu. So that also means, that also tells us that they, at least in their era, did not make any distinction between being a Bengali and being a Hindu.
Yeah.
So this is something that we should keep in mind, and also understand that the local identity was used, was rather utilized by the nationalist thinkers or revolutionary nationalist leaders of the Swadeshi era to begin with, as a launchpad to a larger idea of all India or pan India nationalist feeling. So they were using the Bengali slash Hindu identity as a window through which they could look at the larger picture of pan Indian nationalist feeling.
I see.
Does this make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so now I would like to take you back to the very beginning of Upadhyay's or Brahmabandhav Upadhyay's life. Brahmabandhav was born in Hooghly, and he was born in a family of uh, some illustrious men, in the sense that his ancestor was a pure, or said to be, he is said to be, his ancestor is said to be a pure Kanojia Brahmin, somebody
Okay.
who had come to Kanauj, according to that legendary story of the origin
Yeah.
of Brahmins and Kayasthas,
Yeah.
Vaidyas, and
Do
all
you believe
these.
in that story? That story is correct, right?
Well, it is not something that should be believed in, I feel. I
Okay.
think it should be kept in mind as an important way of narrativizing, or an important way of um, capturing the history of uh, of the Bengali race. And I also find an attempt to sort of making the so-called upper castes, the Brahmins, Kayasthas, and Vaidyas, uh, a special and privileged caste in this storytelling. in this form of narrativizing the Bengali races or Bengali ethnicities
Yeah.
history rather.
Hmm.
So again, coming back to Brahmabandhav's family, both his father as well as his grandfather were in the police department, and in particular, his grandfather was posted in Jabalpur, MP, where he was working in the department which was specifically dedicated to suppressing the problem of the thuggis. I hope
Okay.
we know about thuggis. So these
Yeah.
were a special kind of bandits or highway robbers
Hmm.
who used
Hmm.
to kill people
Yeah.
and usurp whatever possessions they had on the
Hmm.
highway,
Hmm.
often using lethal weapons and
Hmm.
special, a special type of stone throwing practice, something that uh, Satyajit Ray has referred to in
Hmm.
one of the Feluda stories.
Hmm.
Anyway, so this sort of background of uh, Bhavani Charan, the Purvashrama name of Brahmabandhu Upadhyay, uh, both his father as well as grandfather being in the police department, tells us something about the milieu, the cultural milieu, and the background, the kind of psychological uh, and the kind of upbringing that he had. So we get to see that from the very beginning, he was rather daredevil sort of a character as a young boy of 14 years old. He first had an incident with some Armenian uh, young men
Okay.
in Hooghly itself, near
Okay.
where he used to live. I think that was in Chuchura, where he had gone for
Okay.
study. Okay, because
Okay.
in Chuchura they used to have better schools and colleges in the Hooghly district.
I
Most
see.
prominently, the Hooghly College, which has now become the Hooghly Muslim College. Anyway,
Oh.
so this incident regarding Bhavani Charan or Brahmabandhu Upadhyay and the Armenian young men
Hmm.
was something like this. So these Armenian young men used to eve tease, they used to pester, disturb the women who went to the river in order to fetch water. And for this sort of eve teasing by the Armenian youths, it became practically impossible for the women of Juncho at that time to come out of their household,
Hmm.
a feeling of safety.
Hmm.
Bhavani Charan and his friends became quite bothered about this, and they first of all went straight away to these Armenian people, these young men of Armenian origin, and warned them of severe consequences if they do not stop eve teasing the local women. But that did not work. So Bhavani Charan took an occasion to meet the great political leader of his childhood era, namely S.N. Banerjee, Surendranath Banerjee, who had, around the same time when this incident was happening with Bhavani Charan or
Hmm.
Brahmabandhav, had established the Students Association. And, soon after he had established the Indian Association or Bharat
Okay.
Sabha, which was
Okay.
the first political organization or platform created by the Indians themselves.
Okay.
So, and this was in 1876. So it was quite before the Congress was set up, you know,
Hmm.
because the Congress was set up in the 1880s, 1888, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah.
Now, Bhavani Charan was 14 years of age at that time. Well, he was born in 1861, the same year as Rabindranath Tagore. So
Hmm.
he took this chance, grabbed this opportunity to go and meet Surendranath Banerjee, who had come to Chunchuo to deliver um, a speech. This was his, special forte, Surendranath's actually, that he used to go all around Bengal and offer lectures or speeches so that he could enthuse his countrymen with a sense of political awareness. Now, we must keep in mind that this was merely to awaken the political awareness and not to enthuse them for any kind of revolutionary action, because Surendranath was a moderate, or
Yeah,
some
he was
people
strictly
have
against independence.
not strictly against, but he was of the opinion that it would be, or firstly, he was of the opinion that it would be good for India to remain under the British Empire's auspices, and secondly, he became, he started talking about the dominion status.
Yeah,
Which would be which would be described as a partial sort of independent polity,
yeah.
as part of the Commonwealth,
Yeah.
like Australia and other countries.
Hmm.
So Surendranath was performing a very important role at that time. He was trying to awaken an almost absent political consciousness, in the Bengali people. And in one such lecture, which was being offered by Surendranath in the village where Bhavanicharan Brahmabandhav used to live, he straight away went to meet S.N. Banerjee and told him about the problem created by these Armenian youths. So, what did S.N. Banerjee tell him? He advised him that he should keep calm, and he will bring this incident to the notice of the higher authorities. So,
Okay.
this is typical of the approach of constitutional agitation, which was Surendranath's special type of politics.
Okay.
So this advice by Surendranath, uh, Brahmabandhav could not like it, and he decided that something has to be done on his own. So he gathered some of his friends and gave these Armenian youths a good beating, so to speak. As a result of that, the eve teasing completely stopped. So this was a kind of incident at a very early stage of Brahmabandhav's life, which convinced him of the efficacy of force and radical action. Uh,
Hmm.
that's why I think he became quite fascinated with the idea of gaining strength and power. He around that same time, when he was a boy of 15 and 16, 15 or 16 years of age,
Hmm.
he decided that he should learn the military ways. He should take up military training. And
Hmm.
for that reason, he again gathered some of these friends of his and uh, left his home. So this was like Badi Theke Palano, fleeing home.
Hmm.
And they actually reached Gwalior, which was under the Sindhyas, because he had this idea that if he could manage to reach a province or a place or a princely state where the Indian king was ruling, where an Indian, a native king was ruling, then he would be able to get admitted into the military team or the army of
Hmm.
that princely state or the king,
Hmm.
and thus he would be able to learn
Hmm.
some military ways.
Yeah.
But soon after they reached Gwalior, the people who were the parents or other relatives of his friends, they were able to get hold of them, and
Hmm.
as a result, they had to soon return to their village. So this was a failed attempt at Brahmabandhav's part, at Bhavanicharan's part, uh, the first failed attempt to get admitted to something that would be very urgent. He was always focused on doing something urgently,
Hmm.
something that was impressed upon him, probably because of the incident involving the Armenian youths.
Hmm.
Right after that, I think when he was 16 years of age, Brahmabandhu again fled home, and this time he did not bring any of his friends along with him, because he thought that then it would be easier for him to sort of hide hide himself and not get caught by his family, by his relatives.
Okay.
So this time also he reached Gwalior and he met the uh, general of the Sindhia king.
Okay. Okay.
Now, unfortunately for Brahmabandhav, the uh, Sindhia general, when Brahmabandhav requested him to take him into the into the army fold of the Sindhia king and train him in military ways,
Hmm.
the general told him that he is just a titular general, and practically they had no power over the military resources. So the military aspect of the
Oh.
state, of the princely state, was completely overtaken by the British, and the king was looking at very basic um, political and administrative stuff.
Hmm.
So which was pretty common for the princely states of that time, of the colonial
Yeah.
times. Now, this made Bhavani Charan quite depressed to begin with. He was
Hmm.
still a young lad of 16 or 17, and he gets to hear for the first time, he gets disillusioned, disabused of his idea that Indian princely states control their own army or military resources. And when he
Hmm.
got to know that this was merely an illusion, merely a lie, when he
Hmm.
actually came to know the extent of British colonial power over native Indian states, he became, uh, you know, practically depressed.
Hmm.
And this set him on a very novel path, on a very new path. He became quite, uh, inward looking. He became enamored with spiritual ideas, with
Okay.
uh, the religious concepts of Hinduism to begin with,
Hmm.
because he was born a Hindu and a Brahmin, and he was quite well accomplished in education. He was a prodigious learner. He had
Hmm.
learned both English as well as Sanskrit very well. He was quite conversant in both these languages, and something that can be testified by his English writings in the magazines that he edited. He edited a lot of magazines. He was like, when we start and um, imagine how he managed to, first of all, establish or start, uh, specially themed, focused periodicals, journals, magazines, or various kinds of publications, and the number of them was quite high. We really become astonished, amazed. So, in these magazines that he edited, or started and then edited himself, like Sophia, which was a Catholic journal, and
Okay.
then 20th century, also Catholic journal. Then
I
he
see.
started editing Sandhya and finally Swaraj. So in all these publications, what is quite impressively clear is his grasp over the English language as well as Sanskrit and Bengali.
When he's editing the Sandhya, was he still Christian?
No, he
Oh.
was partly Christian and partly Hindu. I'll explain what that means.
Okay.
So at the time of editing Sandhya, he had become very disillusioned with the Christian missions, and particularly
Okay.
with the Catholic mission. He was in his second phase of his life. When
Okay.
he became a Christian, he had
Hmm.
first taken uh, initiation as a Protestant.
Okay.
That was in Karachi. He spent
Okay.
10 years of his life, considerably long time, in two or three cities in the Sindh province.
Okay.
Firstly, in Hyderabad of Sindh,
Okay.
not Telangana or Andhra, Hyderabad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then also in Karachi, of course, and also in Supur. That's also a place in Sindh. He
Could you repeat
also
once more
had
because your voice was gone for a while. The last place you mentioned.
Right. So it was Hyderabad of Sindh, then Karachi, and Sukkur. This is a place
Okay.
in Sindh. Okay.
Okay.
So you can maybe write it as Sukkur. Okay.
Okay.
Pretty odd name. Anyway, so because he had spent 10 years of his life in Sindh, in the Sindh province, he had made a lot of contribution to the literary, cultural, religious lives, and as well as the social life of Sindhis. He first of all became quite conversant in the Sindhi language when he was
Hmm.
living there,
Hmm.
and it was around that time when he had decided to become a Christian. But there is a backstory to it, and the backstory originates in Calcutta, where he was
Okay.
studying as a student in the General Assembly's institution. Okay,
Okay.
so this is something that the Reverend, the Christian missionary Alexander Duff had established.
Okay.
Uh, and Duff's college, Duff's institution, later the Scottish Church, uh, was also the alma mater of Swami Vivekananda.
Hmm.
And because they were living at that time in the same city, they were studying in the same college or institution, and they were of almost the same age. Vivekananda was born in 1863, so he was just 2 years younger to Brahmabandhav, but they studied in the same class,
Hmm.
incidentally. So they were bosom friends. This is something that we should keep in mind because in his transformation from a Catholic sannyasi, as he used to describe himself, to
Hmm.
Vedantin Hindu,
Hmm.
Vivekananda played a great role. Okay,
I
and
see.
especially the death of Vivekananda played a very significant role, to be specific. Now,
I see.
coming back to the days of Brahmabandhav's studentship in General Assemblies or Scottish Church, he was basically attracted to the Brahmo Samaj faction led by Keshav Chandra Sen. And
Okay.
Keshav Chandra was considered as the most skilled orator of his time
Okay.
in Calcutta. You
I
know,
see.
and in his oratorical skills, he had even surpassed, at least in terms of popularity, at least in terms of his reach to the general populace, the leader of the Adi Brahmo Samaj, that is Rabindranath's father, Maharishi Devendranath Tagore.
Hmm.
So Keshav Chandra was exercising a great influence on the young boys and young men of Calcutta
I see.
around 18, that would be late 1870s, okay, and early
Okay.
1880s.
Hmm.
Keshav Chandra, even though he was initially uh, uh, right hand commandant of Maharishi Devendranath Tagore, especially in the 1860s, he started to show an inclination towards Christianity, and especially to Christ as a perfect uh, avatar or incarnation of God.
Hmm.
Because of this inclination, this strong inclination towards Christ, the figure of Christ, as well as certain general tenets of Christian religion and Christian morality, there was a lot of agitation going on at the time within the Adi Brahmo Samaj, of which he was initially a part.
Hmm.
And because of this, even Maharishi Devendranath was quite, I should say, angry with him. That would be a fair term to use, because you should keep in mind that the Adi Brahmo Samaj's role in the 1850s and early 1860s to safeguard the Hindu youth, both young Hindu men and women, from Christian proselytizing missions from the evangelists was of a paramount level. So it was basically under the leadership of Maharishi Devendranath that Calcutta Hindus had become organized in order to give a very strong resistance to evangelical missions in Calcutta,
I see.
and
I see.
significantly led by Alexander Duff himself, Reverend Duff. Okay,
Alexander Duff was against proselytization, or he was
no, no,
leading. He was leading the proselytization.
correct. So
Okay. Okay.
Alexander Duff, Reverend Duff,
Hmm.
was
Hmm.
a leading proponent of evangelism, evangelical
Okay.
Christianity, and he was, he had at one point in late 1840s and early 1850s began to convert young Hindu boys along with their wives, because remember at that time Hindu wedding was basically child marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
So the students of his institution were getting converted along with their wives. This is significant, okay?
Hmm.
Because for a previous generation, uh, both the number of converts in the Hindu society, in Bengali Hindu society, in Calcutta in particular, as well as the penetration of these evangelical Christian missionaries into the women folk of the Hindu society of Bengal was almost next to none. They were
I
unable
see.
to convert people, to win converts for their denominations. But
Hmm.
through Duff's institution, this sort of proselytization or conversion into Christianity uh, had started with an increased pace. Okay,
Hmm.
it gained steam, and at that time, Raja Radhakanta Dev, who was still around, even though he was a contemporary of Raja Ram Mohan Rai and a contender, also a collaborator in some ways,
Okay.
mainly in education, he recognized that only Maharishi Devendranath had the energy and the zeal to resist this sort of conversion efforts by Duff and other
Hmm.
missionaries, in
Hmm.
Calcutta and Ceram. So Maharishi Devendranath was staunchly against conversion of Hindus of Bengal into Christianity
Hmm.
or any other religion.
Hmm.
And because Keshav Chandra was beginning to show a strong inclination towards uh, Christ and to Christianity as a whole, he was quite angry with Keshav Chandra and expelled him from the Adi Brahmo Samaj, which is when Keshav Chandra started a new faction or denomination, the Bharatbharshio Brahmo Samaj, the Indian Brahmo Samaj. Later on, he had become quite interested with the idea of striking a balance between Hinduism and Christianity. He wanted to harmonize these two religions, which is when he started the Navo Vidhan or the new dispensation, as he called it, Navo Vidhan
Okay.
or new dispensation Brahmo Samaj. So
I see.
Bhavani Charan or young Brahmabandhav was following both these two factions or organizations started by Keshav Chandra. Okay, give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Just plugged in my laptop. Okay, so Bhavani Charan or young Brahmabandhav Upadhyay was
Hmm.
deeply influenced by the speeches, the oration of Keshav Chandra, and not why just him, the creme de la creme of the educated Bengali youth, especially from Calcutta and other metropolitan centers of Bengal, such as in Dhaka.
Hmm.
They began to follow Keshav Chandra en masse. And
I see.
even Vivekananda, Narendranath Datta, was initially a follower of Keshav Chandra.
Hmm.
Now, it is from Keshav Chandra that Bhavani Charan or Brahmabandhu Upadhyay uh, was influenced with the idea of looking at Christ, the figure of Christ, as the most perfect incarnation of God,
Okay.
or avatar, and also he became quite enamored with the Christian religion and particularly the Catholic religion.
Hmm.
So when he was around 20, he went off to uh, this tour across north and northeastern India. Sorry, northwestern India, not
Okay.
northeastern. Extremely sorry.
Okay.
Uh, Northern India and northwestern India uh, were very extensively toured by him. He was basically trying to seek religious guidance in Hindus, in Hindu sannyasins, in Christians, bishops, and so on, leaders of the Christian society in India, which was a very small society at that time, in fact. And finally, he decided to settle in Hyderabad of Sindh. There, initially, he started working at a school. He actually helped found or establish this academy called Hiranand Academy. This is somewhere he used to teach both the glory of ancient India and the Christian morals. Now, even though the authorities of Hiranand Academy were quite impressed by the teaching capability, the capacities of Brahmabandhav. He was still Bhavani Charan, by the way. He had not changed his name. Uh, they were quite impressed by the capacities of Bhavani Charan as a teacher. They started to feel uneasy at his Christian inclination, just as Maharishi Devendranath was becoming more and more uneasy with Keshav Chandra
Keshav
Sen.
Chandra. Hmm.
So you get to see a same kind of drama, so to speak, getting repeated in the life of Bhavani Charan.
Why were they feeling
And
uneasy?
of course, because Hiranand was a staunch Hindu, and even
Okay.
though he was in favor of social reform, but
Hmm.
he was mainly interested in bringing, or rather awakening, a sense of pride in Indian identity and Indian roots
I
among
see.
the Sindhi youth, among the youth
I
of
see.
Sindh province.
Okay.
And because Bhavani Charan himself was a very good teacher and a good orator in his own right, he had gathered quite a bit of following among the students of Hiranand Academy.
Okay. How old
He
is he
had
at this
students.
point?
He was around 22, 3.
I see.
So he was basically teaching ancient Indian glory. He was talking about the glory of ancient India through Sanskrit epics and the darshanas.
Hmm.
And he was quite, fond of Vedanta, which is sort
Okay.
of understandable because he had a Brahmo Samaj root, and also
Okay.
he was, born in a Brahmin family. He had a proper Sanskrit education,
Hmm.
so he also had English education. We have
Hmm.
already mentioned that. But
Yeah.
now Bhavani Charan gathered quite a bit of following, which was basically becoming a point of contention between him and the authorities of the Hiranand Academy. Because many of his students were like him, due to his influence, taking to Christian ways. Okay, they were also
Okay.
on the path of converting to Christianity, and this actually came to be true. Uh,
Okay.
at one time during this period, in this phase of his life, Bhavani Charan first became a Protestant Christian, but within a very few days or weeks, I think, he became dissatisfied with the Protestant religion, and he took to Catholicism.
Okay.
Okay, it was at the time of his initiation as a Christian that he took the name Theophilus after the name of a very well-known medieval scholastic saint, Christian saint. So Theophilus basically means, the Latin word Theophilus means friend of God. Theos is God and Philos friend. So he took an Indian translation of that name, Brahmabandhu. Initially, he took that name Brahmabandhu, which later became Brahmabandhav or Brahmabandhav.
Okay. Okay.
And he also kept, the later part of his family surname, which was Bandhopadhyay. His name was Bhavani Charan Bandhopadhyay. So he took the later part of this surname, Upadhyaya,
Hmm.
and he explained this in his Sophia, in his editorial columns of Sophia journal, uh, why he took this name, and he also explained why he was keeping this connection with his family surname. Upadhyaya, he explained, was the word that signified a teacher, and he was extremely serious about the profession of the Brahmins as a teacher of
Hmm.
religion, of the Shastras, which
Hmm.
means both religious as well as secular uh, streams of knowledge, sciences,
Hmm.
linguistics, etc., etc., medicine.
Hmm.
So he was quite proud of his Hindu Brahmin roots.
Hmm.
So he uh, basically uh, declined to completely secede from that route. Okay,
Hmm.
this is quite interesting. This is something that we will see as a very prominent and recurrent theme all throughout Brahmabandhav's life. Now onward, we will call him Brahmabandhav. He has taken that
Yeah.
name. And he tries to strike a balance, just like his guru, uh, Keshav Chandra Sen, in his later days as the leader of the Navavidhan, a new dispensation of Brahmo Samaj. He wanted to harmonize Christianity, specifically Catholic Christianity, Catholicism, and Vedanta. Okay, he thought that this religion, Catholicism, was a universal religion and was the best expression of any kind of universalism in religious field. So, if a
Okay.
religion could become universal, could be accepted by any people, irrespective of their class, creed, nation, ethnicity, then
Hmm.
Catholicism is it. It is.
Hmm.
And he was also proud of his Hindu roots, as we have already pointed out, and he wanted Catholicism to be spread through a Hindu guard. Okay. Now,
Okay.
when I say that he wanted Catholicism to be spread all throughout India, he meant it.
Hmm.
He was quite serious about it. He was of the opinion that only by spreading Catholicism through the length and breadth of India, India could become socially as well as politically strong. This is something that we
Okay.
should keep in mind. So this was another of the recurrent themes of Brahmabandhav's life, another of his
Okay.
preoccupations. So he wanted India to become a socially emancipated as well as politically strong nation. And he believed
Okay.
that the only way to bring about such
Hmm.
changes in India was to spread Catholicism. But he believed that this has to be done without going into a direct clash with Hinduism. He
Okay.
was, in fact, in his journal Sophia, he used to write quite frequently in the editorial column of Sophia, the journal that he used to edit from the Catholic mission in Hyderabad. He preached, he basically strategized that the preachers of Catholicism have to put on the garb of the Hindu sannyasi, the saffron, okay, Gerua Bashu. But he was also of the opinion that they should not mislead the Hindus, the Hindus who were quite reverential of anybody wearing the uh,
Yeah.
Gerua or the saffron
Geru.
clothes of a
Hmm.
sannyasin. He said
Hmm.
that prominently one has to wear the cross on their around their neck. So he himself
Okay.
used to do this, and he used to do another, antique. I do call it an antique because that's how the Sindhis, the locals of Hyderabad, and also then in other cities and in Sindh, used to look at or look upon it. He used to do Nagar Sankirtan, okay, going around the streets of the city in Hyderabad, Karachi, also in Punjab, in Multan, Lahore, in these
Hmm.
places, basically northwestern and western India, also in Bombay, very prominently. where he used to frequently come to deliver lectures, give speeches to spread Catholicism. So basically, he led these Nagar Sankirtanas, which had created quite a stir among the local Hindus of all these various metropolises, right? So they started to deride him, first of all, and then started to attack him in terms of socially ostracizing him because he had gained quite a bit of entry into the Sindhi society thanks to his oratorical skills and his reputation as a great teacher. Okay, so
Srijit, I
young
have
people,
to interrupt you a little because
yes.
I'm not getting this. Why do the British have a problem with him? He's doing their job only. He's spreading Catholicism.
No, 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 no. Sorry, if I gave you the impression that the British were agitated, it was the local
Okay.
Hindus, the Sindhis,
Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
who were
Okay.
agitated and who became
Yeah.
disturbed quite naturally
Right. Right.
because they saw Brahmabandhav as a threat
Yeah. Yeah.
to the future of their children because he
Okay.
had a great influence on them and
Yeah.
therefore he was basically uh, subtly influencing them to
Hmm.
accept Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I should also mention that uh, a particular, very conspicuous trait of Brahmabandhav's character was his great conviction in anything that he did or he believed in. So when he was uh, a believer in, getting trained in the princely state armies, he immediately took action on it. When he started to have
Hmm.
an inclination towards Christ and Christianity, he
Right.
acted on it very immediately.
Yeah.
So he was a man of conviction, of strong
Right.
opinions. And so when he started to preach Catholicism, he believed that that was the end all of his life as well as
Hmm.
of Indian life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what happened around the same time was the rise of theosophical society, okay, led
Hmm.
by Annie Besant,
Yeah.
right? So Annie Besant was this uh, British woman who had started her career as a journalist and a feminist in Britain, but she discovered Hinduism through the writings of Madame Blavatsky, and
Okay.
she enrolled herself in the Theosophical Society, and very soon he rose through the ranks of the society and became, almost a spokesperson, a leader of that society. So he came,
Okay.
so sorry, she came to India and she had uh, stationed herself in Adyar in present-day Chennai in Madras province.
Okay.
And the works of the Theosophical Society was spreading very rapidly throughout India.
Hmm.
She used to go and speak before large audiences and audiences of all kinds, both the general public as well as erudite people such as
Hmm.
professors, intellectuals, and industrialists, politicians, Indian politicians, of course,
Hmm.
um, all sorts of people. So at the same time, Vivekananda, so this is already 1893, we have come to
Okay.
1893, 94. Vivekananda has accomplished his conquest of the West, to borrow the phrase of Binoy Kumar Shortkar, and he had created a sense of great pride in the mind of the Hindus in India, of the whole Indian subcontinent, you know, so that Vivekananda's preaching of Vedanta as well as Annie Besant's preaching of Hinduism were bolstering each other. So as a movement, they were converging almost,
Hmm.
even though there was hardly any collaboration between them. In fact,
Okay.
Annie Besant had, not Annie Besant directly, I'm not sure whether she herself was behind it, but the Theosophical Society itself was critical sometimes of Vivekananda and declined to collaborate with him in a direct manner. But I'm talking about collaboration in a larger sense because
Hmm.
both of them were basically uh, carrying out the same mission, which is to
Hmm.
revive a sense of pride in the native
Hmm.
religion, that is
Hmm.
Hinduism, in the minds of the people of Indian subcontinent. This Brahmabandha proved to heart. He saw both Vivekananda as well as Annie Besant as his opponents. Now, this is despite the fact that Vivekananda was his bosom friend of sorts when they were children. Even though I should mention that in his young days, when he was in Calcutta studying in Calcutta institutions, and later on also when he was, coming under the influence of Kishore Chandra Sen, Brahmabandhav was never so greatly interested in Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, okay,
Okay.
which was who was rather a life-defining force for Vivekananda, Abhedananda, and all these young people who were highly educated Calcutta youth, right? Also Brahmananda, Rahul Maharaj. So Brahmabandhav's life had, from that point onward, as a student in Calcutta, uh, flowed in a different course, following a different course. It took him to different destinations all across northern and northwestern India, and he made it a point to follow. You know, this is quite funny to me. He made it a point to follow Mrs. Besant wherever she went to preach Hinduism. Sometimes he would reach in that city where Mrs. Besant was supposed to give a speech in the same venue sometimes, and offer a speech or lecture himself. Brahmabandhu would lecture himself on why Catholicism is the best religion. So this was a phase in his life where he was a staunch follower of Catholicism. Now let's come to the last one, third phase.
Yeah.
Okay, this phase that I described just now had continued for 10 years, which is a very significant, almost a generation of his lifetime, uh, in his pursuit of Catholicism and making Catholicism as the religion which will salvage India socially as well as politically. But at the same time, he was, towards the end of this phase, becoming estranged from the mainstream of Catholic bishops and followers of Catholicism, the Catholic Church in general, because he had started to show a great inclination towards Vedanta. So the latent Vedanta or love for Vedanta that was in his heart, that was almost, one can say, suppressed in his subconsciousness, was emerging at that point of time. And this started off, of course, as his attempt to harmonize Christianity and Vedanta. He even said that Christianity can, and Catholic Christianity, can be effectively spread throughout India only if it is spread through the Vedantic style, okay, not the Vedantic tenets, but using the Nyaya or the logic of Vedanta, using uh, the metaphors and the images of Vedanta, and so on and so forth. But around this time, he started to face a backlash from the Christian church, sorry, the Catholic Church itself. So they uh, cut off funding for his Sophia publication called
Okay.
Sophia, which was his main instrument for spreading his ideas. And at this time, he decided to take some of his chosen disciples and find out a place in some secluded area in the forests or the riverbanks, holy riverbanks of India, to create what he called a Catholic mott or a mutt, which was a Catholic mott, okay, Catholic mutt. And he made an Indian, a Sanskrit sort of term for Catholicism or Catholic, rather, which is Catholic. He said that Ka stands for Kala, that is time, and Sala means space. And therefore, he said that it means basically a universal religion which is beyond both space and time, the limitations of space and time. So, this Catholic mutt was established at a very secluded and very spiritually stimulating spot on the banks of uh, Narmada River. And you know the significance of the river Narmada for Hindu sannyasis, for people who are undertaking sadhana in Tantra and also Vedanta. They often took or chose the banks of Narmada River as their abode. So he also, Brahmabandhav also started this but in, on the riverbank of Narmada. And
So
there he started
is
to
that mud
focus.
still here?
No, in
Okay.
fact, that mutt had a very short life. It
Oh.
had barely existed for a year. Again, because the people who used to fund him found out very soon that he was now going full throttle towards Vedantizing, if I may use that term,
Christianity. Hmm.
Vedantizing Catholicism, more
Hmm.
specifically.
I mean,
Therefore,
is the structure at least there?
no, nothing's there. I don't think so.
I see. Okay.
So this, and you can imagine that it wasn't a very grand structure. It was a
Hmm.
humble kutia kind of, or an assembly of huts where you used to live
I
with
see. I see.
select few disciples like Reva
Hmm.
Chand and Brahmachari Animananda, who had written his biography called The Blade, very significant title. He is like
Hmm.
the Talwar. So that is a very apt description for Brahmabandha. Now,
Hmm.
from this point onwards, Brahmabandha focused more and more on Vedantizing uh, Catholicism in the true sense of the term.
Hmm.
What did that mean? It meant that Christ was described by Brahmabandha as an avatar in the same sense as Sri Krishna was an avatar, and somebody who had lived his life following the tenets, not possibly, he did not claim that it was uh, Jesus Christ's planning, that he was very consciously following Hindu or Vedantic principles. But he says that in his life or through his life, Christ idealized the tenets of Vedanta. He was, a great symbol of the Vedantic tenets or principles. Makes sense.
Hmm.
So basically, now he is trying to project uh, uh, Christ as nothing but, as none but one of the many avatars in the Hindu
Hmm.
pantheon. Now,
Yeah.
rather than Catholicism becoming the dominant half in his scheme of harmonizing Catholicism
Hmm.
and Hinduism, now Hinduism or Vedanticism, more properly speaking, taking over as the dominant role. So it is
Yeah.
coming to subsume or assimilate Christianity and more specifically Catholicism, which is why
Yeah.
his funders, his Catholic followers, had become disillusioned with him and angry with him.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was one person called uh, Zaleski, I think that was his name, probably a Polish person, who had been the leader of the Catholic Church, Bishop
Okay.
Zaleski. So he took the initiative to specifically bring out a fatwa kind of a ban uh, on any publication or any preaching, any speech giving, lecturing by Brahmabandha to any Catholic audience. Okay, so
Okay.
this is when Brahmabandha realized that Catholicism and Christianity as a whole had something fundamentally uh, against the Hindu life and the Hindu outlook, and more specifically, uh, it was not in harmony with the mainstream of Indian life. Because I told you that one of the main preoccupations of Brahmabandha quite early on from his life was to socially and politically empower India, right? So
Hmm.
around this time, when he saw this sort of repressions coming from the Catholic Church on his teaching, on his own writings, his publications, he started to slowly realize that Catholicism and Christianity as a whole had something fundamentally opposed to the Hindu and larger Indian
Hmm.
life
Hmm.
and Indian outlook. This is when he returned to capital, and this was almost towards the turn of the century. So this was 1900, I think. No, I think it was 1899 when he returned to India, or 1898 perhaps. And around that time, he met Vivekananda again, and they regained their lost friendship.
Okay.
In fact, there was one occasion when Brahmabandhu was, almost mad with his project of spreading Vedanta through the length and breadth of India, and then even going beyond India, going to the West. And he was definitely enthused by Vivekananda's and Abhedananda's examples to spread Vedantic ideals and the Vedantic religion, Hindu religion in general, in the West and also throughout the Indian subcontinent. He met uh, Vivekananda, who was sitting in the uh, park called Hedua, right,
Okay.
in Calcutta, North Calcutta. So he met him and he saw Vivekananda quite, uh, quite melancholy. And he asked Vivekananda, Bhai Narendra, why don't we start once again like you did in your youth to spread Vedanta not just throughout India but also going beyond, going to the West? Vivekananda, in his melancholic mood, replied to him, Bhavani Bhai. He used to call him Bhavani Bhai. Please understand that I'm not going to live longer. Okay. So this was in 1901 because I remember that this encounter between Vivekananda and Brahmabandhav had occurred just 6 months before Vivekananda passed away. So this was
Okay.
late 1901 or early 1902. Vivekananda passed away in July 1902. Right? So Vivekananda said that I'm not going to live much longer. I must finish, this mission's work that I've started at Velu, Ramakrishna Mission, so that I can go after placing it on a firm footing, on a strong foundation. Okay, therefore I cannot focus on anything else at this point. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
That was sort of the last exchange between Brahmabandhav and his childhood friend who had once become his opponent. And again, they had regained their friendship. Anyway,
Yeah.
next personality that Brahmabandhav encounters and becomes a great collaborator of is none other than the poet Rabindranath Tagore. Why?
Okay.
Because after coming back to Calcutta, he had started this new publication called 20th Century because it was the beginning of the 20th century. And in this through this publication, he started to spread his ideas about how Vedanta was a very was the most suitable religious structure and framework for Indians. But he was also talking about society and politics at that time. And he was of the opinion, almost like the moderates of Congress, like S.N. Banerjee, that India must remain under the auspices of the empire, of the British Empire. Because he said that we are still very weak in terms of organizing politically, organizing ourselves politically. So he said that the British Empire had arrived at India not just as a kind of chance incident, but as a veritable blessing of the omnipotent God. Okay,
Okay.
because at that time India had become almost dissipated in terms of political and social and even creative energy. Okay, that was his opinion. So he wanted India to remain under the auspices of the empire, but he was also starting to very vocally criticize some principles, some policies of the British, and especially this started with the Boer War policy of the British. Now, you
Okay.
might be aware that in the Boer War, actually there were two Boer wars in South Africa, where the Afrikaans people were basically trying to keep their freedom from the British, and they fought against a very strong and almost a lopsided war. They fought against the British, even though towards the beginning of the Boer War, the Africans were badly hurting, giving a lot of casualties to the British because they had
Okay.
been intimately aware of the terrain of South Africa, their holdings.
Okay.
Taking this as a sort of cue to start his criticism of the British, Romano started talking about how the British are extremely material and that material inclination is expressed, is revealed through the British policies in all these continents, especially in Asia and Africa. He also criticized the British policy in China because at that time the British were, uh, you know, uh, selling a lot of opium in China, which had made the Chinese very weak, both physically as well as morally. And as a result, they were getting a bad beating at the hand of the Japanese in the
Hmm.
initial Sino-Japanese wars.
Okay.
So he started criticizing British Empire and European civilization. He is
Okay.
basically one of the first critics, along with Vivekananda, of this colonial aspect of the British Empire and certain aggressive policies of the British, but in general of European civilization. He started
I
to
see.
vocally criticize European civilization when he started this publication called Sandhya, which was a Bengali publication. And uh, Bhupendranath Dotto, Dr. Bhupendranath Dotto, who was the younger brother of Narendranath,
Swami
also known
Vivekananda.
as Swami Vivekananda, was, as you might know, a very important revolutionary nationalist, and he used to edit. He was the editor of the Jugantar uh,
Hmm.
uh, publication, right, along with Marindra Kumar Ghosh, the younger brother of Sri Aurobindo.
Hmm.
Bhupendra Kumar was a very close confidant, you can even call him a very close confidant of Brahmabandhav, because Brahmabandhav had started writing these extremist and extremely, you know, um, what is the right word for it? Extremely critical. Critical does not even capture it. Sometimes his language used to cross basic decency. Like he used to say that right now the Indians are under the spell of tamoguna, and it's like the opiates who are almost dying because of their addiction to opium, and therefore it is not only preaching but choti, that is sandals, should be applied on the sleeping Indians, especially Bengalis, and also the British, because he used to write these peculiar editorials which were almost bordering on violence, inciting violence. He used to basically give a call, frequently give a call to come to hate the British. And it
Hmm.
went to the extent of describing the British uh, uh, physical features as something that
Okay.
is inferior and something that is worthy of
I
uh,
see.
despising compared to Indian physical features.
Hmm.
So that was the Brahmabandhav of Sandhya. And
Hmm.
around this time, his nationalist feeling was so strong. Dr. Bhupendranath Datta writes in an introduction to the book, the biography on Brahmabandhav written by booksellers Haridas and Mukhopadhyay, that it was the nationalist zeal which had slowly initiated the transformation, the final transformation of Brahmabandhav from Catholicism or Christianity in general back to Hinduism, to his Hindu
Hmm.
roots. So much
Hmm.
so that he again became very reverential of Jati Pratha, of Varnashrama, and he started to defend anything and everything Indian. So he basically became a staunch conservative, and even one can describe him as a reactionary. But what
I
is
see.
important to notice here, ignoring all these uh, over the top uh, claims and exhortations made by Brahmabandhav, that he was finding back his way to his home. He was again coming to belong to his uh, Hindu fort, to his Hindu identity, which was his home in the true sense. And Bhupendranath Datta says in that introduction, which I mentioned, that it was this nationalist zeal which had caused his transformation, his final transformation from Christianity to Hinduism.
I
Okay,
see.
and nothing else. This is according to Bhupendranath.
Okay.
One thing I would like to mention in between is that around 1901 to 1903, between these 3 years, almost 8 months were spent by Brahmabandhav in the West, and specifically in England. His purpose was to preach Vedanta in the universities of the West, and therefore he chose Oxford as well as Cambridge in order to give his lectures. I think he In total, he gave around 8 lectures in both these premium universities of the uh, British of England, and therefore uh, he gained quite a bit of followership even among the British intellectuals, and who started to take an interest in his publications, especially his last English publication, which is the 20th century. Right
Okay.
now, one final thing I should add before stopping, and then maybe we can take a few questions,
Hmm.
uh, is that Brahmabandhav is the first proponent of the idea of intellectual Swaraj. This is something that I am quite enthusiastic about when I talk about Professor uh, Krishna Chandra Bhattacharya, KC Bhattacharya, who was a very renowned philosopher from early 20th century, academic philosopher. And he gave us this beautiful idea called Swaraj in Ideas. But it was, in fact, almost 28 years before K.C. Bhattacharya gave this lecture, which became the very source of his ideas of strong ideals and ideas of Swaraj in Ideas through the columns of 20th century and Sandhya. And also, there was another Bengali, another publication started by both Upadhyay Brahmabandhav and Vipin Pal called Swaraj. Okay, where they started talking about this mental colonization, how political colonization can be, rather political decolonization can only be achieved as a result of downstream from, mentally decolonizing oneself. So, in many senses, Brahmabandhav was a precursor of decolonialist thinkers such as K.C. Bhattacharya and also the African decolonialist thinker Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Okay?
Okay.
So, who had written a very important book called Decolonizing the Mind. Uh,
I see.
Anyway, so Swaraj in the mental sphere, in the sphere of culture, in the sphere of ideas, that is one thing. And this sense of looking at the Videshi, the foreigner, as a lecture, because the very first line that Brahmabandhav had written in the first number of his Sandhya was Rajam Lech. Okay? That is, the king is a lecture. And I guess we are aware of the meaning of lecture, right? That is somebody
Yeah.
who's impure in their
Yeah.
practices, and as a result, as a people, they're impure. So the idea that, uh, or rather the ideas that Brahmabandhav was spreading, and he was quite successful in spreading, and as a result, he was able to lay down the foundations for Swadeshi movement to erupt in Bengal, was that the Bengali could lose this reverential attitude towards the British, and they could look upon the British as a sort of foreign race, other, and therefore somebody who should be looked with suspicion as well as some amount of hatred. Okay,
Right.
so this was critical for the Bengalis, people in Bengal, to gain their confidence, to lose their, to shake off their feeling of reverential attitude and even a respectful, fearful attitude towards the British, which became a very, very important element apart from the idea of mentally decolonizing oneself to create, to lay the groundwork of Swadeshi and the Swaraj.
Okay. Okay, Srijit, I have just two questions. First
Okay.
is that was it at all just the nationalist zeal, or was it the fact that he realized that Hinduism at the end of the day is accepting, is more of an accepting religion, and therefore he thought that dal nahi galne wali hai in Catholicism, so let's just come back to where I belong. And my second question is that how do we look at this person? How do we let's say evaluate this person in the end? Because the damage he did, the conversions he did, they did not convert back to Hinduism, or his ways of conversion. That's how exactly Christian conversion even happens today. He wrote the manual essentially of conversion basically today. So just the fact that he came back to Hinduism and he wrote some cool columns, do we then absolve him of his conversion past, or the fact that he taught people how to convert Hindus? Because even today in South India, this is what happens. They subtly manipulate you. They wear gerua even. They say Jesus. They do bhumi pujan of churches, etc. So how do we look at this person?
Right. So I will answer your second question first. Firstly, this approach to conversion, to evangelism within Christianity, was not an original idea of Brahmabandhav. Long before Brahmabandhav, this was something that was started by the pioneers of conversion in India, such as Saint Xavier, Saint Francis Xavier, and
I see.
also there was another Christian missionary who had arrived in India in I think the mid 18th century. I'm unable to remember his name. Who had just like Brahmabandhav started wearing the saffron
Gerua.
clothes and almost present himself as a Hindu,
Hindu.
as a Hindu sannyasi,
Hmm.
as a sannyasi, Hindu sannyasi. So
Hmm.
that would make him much more acceptable.
Right.
Secondly, we get to see that Brahmabandhav, despite all his attempts, his efforts to spread Catholicism through India, he was always at this preoccupation of him uh, called harmonizing Vedanta and Christianity. So this was a very recurrent theme. Sometimes Catholicism used to be dominant in this idea, and sometimes towards the later half of his life, it became rather Hinduism became the Vedantic ideals became the dominant half of this assimilation project. So I think in many ways, this phase of Brahmabandhav's Christianity or his hobnobbing with Christian religion, Catholicism, was extremely important for him to understand the true nature of the Christian mission. That it was just an arm of the colonial and mental colonization, and this was basically uh, uh, utilized by the political authorities of India at that time, mainly the British administrator, to strengthen their hold on it politically and socially. So this was understood by uh, Brahmabandhav, and not just understood, he was quite clear in expressing it through his later publications, such as 20th Century and Sandhya. In fact, I would like to mention one incident from his last phase the last phase of his life, where Reverend Farquhar, a British bishop, had attacked Sri Krishna
Okay.
by saying all the usual stuff that we get to hear from other religionists about Sri Krishna, that he was not a historical personality, that he was an immoral person, and he could not have uttered the Gita, the lofty
Okay.
ideals of the Gita, etc., etc.
Okay.
This is something that Brahmabandha had very strongly attacked in both speeches and writings, directly naming Farquhar and laying down the, uh, the figure of Sri Krishna as the very foundation of Hindu Dharma. So in this particular attack of or counter attack rather by Brahmabandha, he derived or he came to the conclusion that Sri Krishna is somebody who has to be attacked by the proselytizers because they look upon him, look upon the figure of Krishna as the very root of Hinduism. Okay? So if the root can be cut off, then the entire structure of
Yeah.
Hinduism will wither and die. Right?
Yeah.
Therefore, rather than attacking other parts or other figures or other texts, let us directly attack Sri Krishna. This is something that was understood This was you know, and attacked by Brahmabandhav in very clear terms. So we should look upon, to answer your question proper,
Hmm.
we should look upon Brahmabandhav as somebody who, because of his restless nature, who, because of
Yeah.
his adventurous nature and strongly opinionated nature, was able to go through certain unique life experiences which were not
Hmm.
experienced by other Indians who had converted to Christianity, or even those who were trying to socially or religiously reform Indian life, right?
Hmm.
So this is something unique about Brahmabandhav, which is why I think his return to Hinduism is return as a prodigal son, which might
Hmm.
sound
Hmm.
a little bit counterintuitive, but I'm borrowing that language, that Christian
Hmm.
imagery. The prodigal son returned with a very strong nationalistic zeal.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, if we have to agree with Dr. Upendranath Dutta, then it is his nationalist zeal which had
Hmm.
effected this return. But I personally think that it was his close encounter with Catholicism and Christianity as a
Right.
whole that had
Hmm.
given rise to the final convictions of his life. Okay.
Hmm. Okay.
And
So,
what was your first question?
my first question was exactly this: that whether it was, did he realize that Hinduism is more accepting than Catholicism, and therefore actually harmonization is not possible, or whether it was nationalism?
Right. So, with regard to Hinduism, what he understood is that Hindu and especially Vedantic ideas and ideals, Vedantic principles were much more elevated than the Catholic or, in general, Christian ideals and ideals. So, that is something that he came to realize towards the end of his life. The
Hmm.
second uh, catalyst is something that I had briefly mentioned towards the beginning, was Vivekananda's death. So, at the
Okay.
time when he was collaborating with Rabindranath in his national education project, something
Hmm.
that we have talked about in
Yeah.
one of the previous podcasts,
Hmm.
we said that Rabindranath had set up a Brahmachari ashram school in Bolpur Shantiniketan,
Hmm.
and the first associate that Rabindranath got was Brahmabandhav. Now, after
Okay.
coming to Calcutta and starting his 20th century, Brahmabandhav had also started, a national school called
Okay.
Saraswata Ayatan. The Saraswata
Okay.
Ayatan wanted to teach both Indian as well as Western sciences, Indian
Okay.
Shastras as well as Western
Hmm.
sciences, European sciences,
Hmm.
side by side. This is something that we have seen in common with other people
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Satish Chandra Mukherjee,
Hmm.
Acharya Satish Chandra.
Hmm.
So, from Saraswata Ayatan, uh, he basically quickly jumped over to the Brahmachari ashram of Rabindranath and started to teach there. And this was something that was quite fundamental to the preaching of Hindu and Vedic ideas. After returning from one of his classes at Bolpur one day, as soon as he writes in his memoir, as soon as he landed at Howrah station, he came by train. Uh, Somebody gave him the news of Vivekananda's passing, and this
Okay.
came as a bolt from the blue for
Hmm.
Brahmabandhav. He described this experience of this breaking news of Vivekananda's passing um, as a spear piercing his body. Okay? And as soon as he became a little as soon as he gathered himself, pulled himself together out of the first shock, he decided that somebody has to take the charge of Vivekananda's mission of spreading Vedanta throughout the uh, Indian subcontinent as well as in the West, which
Hmm.
is when his project of going to England and preaching Vedanta to a Western audience, and also preaching Vedanta in the schools like Brahmacharya Ashram, Saraswata Ayatan, which he was running in Calcutta and in Bengal in general. Uh, this idea took root in him. So he saw himself as somebody would carry forward the legacy of Vivekananda. So this was the other catalyst,
Okay.
which is something that we should keep in mind while evaluating the work.
Okay.
And
So I
this also
yeah, yeah,
was the reason of his
coming
staunch
back to
uh, return to Hinduism.
right, right. So, sir, do you have time for any more questions? Will your health permit? I know you are unwell.
One.
Okay. Uh, was Bengal extra bad at that point before these people came on the scene? Because these only Bengali people seem to be trying to tweak Hinduism. Was it because they came under the influence of British education so much, or or the Bengali society was that screwed up? Because
No,
they
no, I
all of
do
them are
not.
noticing that no, Bengali society, Hindu society is in shambles, therefore we need to make tweaks. Only Catholicism can save us, etc. Or only a harmonization with Catholic Christianity can save us. All of these people were essentially saying the same thing.
No, I don't agree that it was only Bengalis who were looking at the Indian society and religion in this way, in this critical way.
Okay.
I think there
Okay.
were other organizations and individuals like the Prarthana Samaj in Maharashtra, with people like with
Right.
people like Rana Day, and also before him,
Hmm.
Phule Kabul. So there were people even outside Bengal who were thinking or acting in the same lines, on the same lines. But
Hmm.
in Bengal, you can say that the intensity and also the number of such individuals and organizations were more compared to other places in India. Now
Hmm.
that can be understood very easily if you look at how the British had organized themselves in India. So they had Bengal as their
Right.
headquarters, with Calcutta being the
Hmm.
capital.
Hmm.
So
Right.
most of the British and the European Western civilizations, light within quotations,
Hmm. Yeah.
fell glaringly on Bengal, on Bengals, okay?
Hmm.
Which is why it made Bengal, quote unquote, progressive thinking,
Hmm.
more
Hmm.
progressive compared to other parts in India. But it is also true that if you look at the kind of movements that were happening in Punjab also, with
Hmm.
Dayananda Saraswati's Arya Samaj, which had already started in the 1870s, right? We get to
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
how very large scale social revolution or social reform movements, religious reform movements were happening in other important cities in India,
Hmm.
not just cities but also regions.
Hmm.
Punjab being one.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Okay, Srijita, thank you. Thank you for this very interesting and enlightening conversation. Every conversation with you takes us through a roller coaster of thoughts, emotions, and new knowledge. Thank you,
Right.
Srijita.
I would like to close by pointing out that
Hmm.
in particular, people will
Hmm.
find the writings on 20th century and Sankhya, which are available through all these biographies I mentioned at the beginning, and also separately in archives in some form or the other, where how the nationalist movement and in particular the Swadeshi movement was prepared, how it was its groundwork was laid down, can become very clear, and how the concept of mentally decolonizing ourselves became a very important theme in the
Hmm.
nationalist project, in the nationalist
Hmm.
program
Hmm.
in India, starting with Bengal. Um,
Hmm.
in understanding these aspects, Brahmabandhav is essential. I cannot, I cannot emphasize his role enough in
I see.
starting the movement towards mental decolonization, as well as the movement towards Swadeshi and boycott.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Again, looking forward to your book, therefore, very much, Agni Yoga. Do we have a tentative date of release?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get it out by the end of this year.
Okay. 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 Thank you, Srijita. Thank you for joining us. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.
वरूढं महाभीमं दुराद्रष्टाम्बरप्रदम् अस्य युक्तं त्रिनेत्रं च कपालकर्णिकाकरां मुक्तकेशीं ललज्जयः पिबन्तीं रुधिरं चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् चतुर्बाहु समायुक्तं वराभयकरं स्मरेत् काली काली महाकाली कालिके पापहारिणी धर्मर्थ मोक्षदे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते धर्मर्थ मोक्षदे देवी नारायणी नमोस्तुते काली काली